our anniversary commemoration of the 59th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March. I want to make a special welcome to the campsite families for being here. It's my understanding that this is the first time since '65, perhaps, that all of the families have been in the same place at the same time. And so it's our honor and it's our privilege to have that happen here at campsite number 4 at the city of St. Jude. I want to keep my remarks brief because what I have to say is not really that important, at least in my estimation. What I just want to say is that St. Jude, as far as I have experienced and others, is a place that has always been a place of hope for those without hope, and a place of warm and sincere hospitality, which was on display in 1965, but that's who we are and it's what we continue to do. And so we want to extend that hospitality that was extended to the marchers to all of you here today. So thank you for being here. If there's anything that any of us can do to make your visit more happy and healthy and holy, because it is a church, please let us know. But we're very pleased to have you here, and we would invite you to please stand as our choir leads us and lift every voice and sing.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 59th anniversary and commemoration of the Selma to Montgomery March, honoring the march that changed the world. My name is Desmond Wilson. I am Director of Community Development at the City of Montgomery. I bring greetings and welcome on behalf of Stephen L. Reed, Mayor of the City of Montgomery, who could not be here today because of a previous engagement. The Mayor sends his warmest thanks to you all, contributing dignitaries, partners, and associates of the Alabama Black Belt National Heritage Area to include the Conservation Fund, City of Marion, the City of Selma, families of Campsite 1, 2, and 3 along the historic trail, City of St. Jude's Campsite number 4, who is the host of this event, representatives of the City of Montgomery, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, American Civil Liberty Union, Mass Architect and Design Group, U.S. National Park Service, Tuskegee University, Alabama State University, the general public, including all of the original foot soldiers who was part of the 1965 March. This historic meeting that is being held today and your attendance is very important for several reasons. First, this meeting will hopefully be the start of refueling the conversation about the future and the history of civil rights, not only in the state of Alabama, but also in the entire country and the world. Second, this meeting hopefully will start the conversation of many future actions that will revive the spirit of those who participated in the 1965 March, understanding that my generations and generations after me still need your support, still need your guidance as we continue on with our civil rights movement. Also, we hope that this meeting will revive the spirits in those like myself who grew up after the movement and benefited from the movement that allowed me to be in the position that I hold in the city today. And also, it gives me the opportunity to also pass the baton on to the next generation of civil rights warriors who will now represent us in our Civil Rights March. Also, we hope that this will also rebirth the spirit in our young people through education and involvement in the political process, such as voting, where today often it seems that there's a disconnect with them about the history of the civil rights movement and about the rights that they have today and the rights that could possibly be taken away from them. And often, sometimes about the rights that they often take for granted. Third, this meeting is important looking ahead to the 60th anniversary, because not only are we trying to revive the spirit of the movement, but to preserve our story of our history, to commemorate the people, sung and unsung heroes, to preserve our monuments, campsites for future generations across the world to learn about and to appreciate. And finally, this meeting is important, especially to the City of Montgomery, as we work diligently with city staffs and partners such as the Conservation Fund and others across this country to develop and implement plans to revitalize the Selma and Montgomery Trail communities, which will hopefully give them opportunities of all races to have access to affordable housing, affordable health care, job training, employment opportunities, access to higher education opportunities, access to advanced technology, economic development, community involvement and reinvestment into the communities, family generational wealth building, and commemorative public art that preserve and tell our stories while honoring again our sung and unsung heroes of the civil rights movement. And also, not last but not least, but also the preservation of the history of St. Jude and the preservation of the campsite. This vision is not just for the City of Montgomery, but for all communities along the Selma to Montgomery Trail, to include all of the other cities that were involved in the civil rights movements, like Marion, Alabama, and Birmingham, Alabama. So I would like to thank you again for your attendance for this most important historic event, and enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Good morning. am Tiffany Tolbert, Senior Director for Preservation for the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and I'm extremely pleased to be here with you today to celebrate the 59th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March, and also thank the Conservation Fund, the City of Montgomery, the campsite families, partners, and stakeholders, and their leadership and enduring advocacy for preserving these significant spaces. There is a prevailing narrative about the civil rights movement that focuses on the approximately 600 people who found themselves on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma on March 7, 1965. On that day and in that place, they faced unquestionable violence, moments that have forever been captured in photographs, video, and history books. However, that event, now called Bloody Sunday, was not the entire story. Rather, it marked the beginning of a 54-mile journey to the Alabama State Capitol here in Montgomery, a journey that included the extraordinary courage of David Hall, Rosie Steele, and Robert and Mary Gardner, who risked their lives and homes to shelter and protect the marchers from numerous threats by the state and vigilantes. Importantly, as we sit here today, the City of St. Jude played a critical role by serving as the fourth campsite, while acknowledging, to quote then Bishop Tulin, there would be consequences. In 2021, the National Trust for Historic Preservation included the Selma to Montgomery March campsites, represented by the David Hall Farm and the Robert Gardner Farm, on our annual list of America's 11 most endangered historic places. The sites were listed not only to raise awareness of their significance, but also to draw attention to the need for restoration and preservation. The listing also emphasized the need for expanded interpretation of the significant landscape in civil rights history, including the stories of these families whose tremendous bravery helped to change American history. At the National Trust and the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, we believe Black history is American history, and it is our responsibility to cultivate spaces to engage with it. We must ensure that everyone has the opportunity to draw inspiration and wisdom from African American historic places. We must tell stories that reflect our complex and difficult past and help us shape a better collective future. Though America may be rich in diverse history, our society has often been poor in representing that history and in funding its protection, conservation, and recognition. The partnerships that have evolved around preserving the campsites and the Selma to Montgomery March National Historic Trail exemplifies this approach. This history is not something that can be contained in a museum or history books. It is living history seen in the people that continue to carry this legacy proudly and steward these resources so that future generations can not only learn but be inspired that the courage and leadership of our ancestors, and that they can see themselves and their role in the continuing fight for civil rights, social justice, and equality in this country. As a native of Montgomery, I am proud to say that this is a legacy that motivates me. It is what inspires me to preserve African American spaces across the country, because that passion is what was cultivated right here in this city, the birthplace of the civil rights movement. So I will close by saying to the campsites, thank you. Thank you for your continued strength, trust, and stewardship. I also thank the Conservation Fund, the City of Montgomery, and all the partners and stakeholders supporting this effort. The National Trust and the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund supports you, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate and investing in this important work. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right, this is truly a celebration this morning, so we should show some energy, okay? I want to appreciate everyone for having me this morning, especially the City of Montgomery, St. Jude Church, and the Conservation Fund. I'm married with the City of Marion. It was only right that I show up today as the fourth generation of the City of Marion. My mother and father and my uncles and aunts all grew up teaching me the history of Marion. And I'm from a sacred place. And I say that because at Jimmy Lee Jackson, 26 years of age, who stands up for his grandfather, and they say it's no greater love than a person who give his life for another. That he sacrificed his life to be a catalyst to start the the Selma to Montgomery March, which changed the whole world. So I'm here today to continue to represent that and to continue to give our country and this world hope that in the midst that we feel that nothing can be done, this history should show us that there's still a way and light that we can stand up and be a sacrifice for someone else. So thank you. I'm here to learn and continue. Everywhere I go, I continue. Everyone has a little story about the march and how they played a part in it. And Jimmy Lee was just one from Sacred Ground in Marion, but from all over the Black Belt, somebody, family member, played a huge part in this movement, because not only did one person do it, thousands and millions did it. So I'm here to continue to learn, and I thank you for having me.
Good morning, everyone. I am Jatan Bosby-Gilchrist, the Executive Director of the ACLU of Alabama. I would like to acknowledge Father Andrew Jones, the pastor of St. Jude, the City of Montgomery, the Conservation Fund. I am here today to talk to you about a couple of things. First of all, being the moment and the movement. The ACLU is an organization, an advocacy organization, founded here in the state of Alabama in 1965. We will be celebrating our 60th next year as well. We are an organization focused on voting rights, criminal legal reform, and gender justice. We do this work in 3 ways: in community, through our legislative advocacy, and through litigation. So you know the ACLU is likely setting precedent for legal issues across the country that have been impactful. But the history of Alabama, when we talk about the progress and the regression and how we are steeped in a tradition of organizing, that is the lens through which we do our work, and that is the lens through which I lead this work and steward it on the shoulders of foot soldiers, and those are the individuals that I am accountable to. And so today, I want to acknowledge that we are remembering the 54-mile trek from Selma to Montgomery, as Ms. Tolbert said. That 1965 Voting Rights Act that came out of an individual, a young man, who stood up in Marion, Alabama. And that history continues to teach us as Black men who lose their lives, and how that engages and moves our community and ultimately changes the world. It is a storied history, but it is one that is truly steeped in a tradition of our community. We are acknowledging the incredible win for voting rights in the Milligan decision that created Congressional District 2, that came out of this here city by Evan Milligan, who is also a child of the movement, and Letitia Jackson, and Shalala Dowdy, and Kadita Stone. We are acknowledging the strength of that came 10 years after the Shelby decision from the Supreme Court that tried to say we were in a post-racial society. But yet again in Alabama, we said that is not the end of the story, and we ensured that there was representation for us going into this election. And today we are preparing for the work ahead. Just this week, the governor signed SB 129, a bill prohibiting the funding of DEI across state programs, offices, and municipalities, and SB 1, criminalizing individuals helping those to complete an absentee ballot. We've got to understand where we are now, what we are still fighting for, and what our obligation is. And so there are 3 things that I like to talk about when we talk about these issues. We have to be intentional, we have to be strategic, and we have to be informed, okay? 3 things. We gotta be intentional, we gotta be strategic, we gotta be informed, we have to be intentional about the people we are investing in and the pipelines we are developing. Do you hear me? I see some young folks here. You got 10 more years before you need to step up and start running for something, okay? We have to understand that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. So we have to be intentional about where we are investing in. We have to be informed. I just shared with you a couple of Senate bills that passed, but we have to be informed and understand what's going on in that state house. We can get excited about what's going on at the federal government, but that state house is going to inform our school boards, what's happening in our community centers, how much our light bill is, how much our water bill is. We've got to be informed, and we have to be strategic. We have to be about that action. See, I had dinner with an elder yesterday, and I said, so I just need to know what y'all, I think I need to understand where that gap is. And she said, well, James Bevel always said that we had to be in formation. It was information. We had to have information. We had to be information. And then she said, in formation. So we have to have a level of information to ensure that we are stepping up and going together towards a purpose. And so what is required of us when we are obligated to lead in a time like this? The moment that we are currently in, I said a week where Alabama has made clear that their obligation to our communities are not a priority. And not only are they not a priority, they are defunding them and they are criminalizing. Okay. So what is required of us in these moments is connecting with our legislators and local officials, knowing who those folks are. Not to just be political socialites, but understand what their obligation and their role is to us as community members. Being aware of what's at stake for our children, for our elders, for our peers, for us, being aware of those things. Understanding that policies impact us statewide. So we can, say, oh, we don't have this, but we have to be mobilizing, because I'm telling you, it doesn't come from a legislator or a president or a governor or a mayor. It comes from the ground. It comes from us. So we have to be mobilized around a purpose. So I want to talk about the movement that we are called to lead. The movement is intersectional, and it's intergenerational, and it is inclusive. And the movement that we are called to lead will require us to have a collective wisdom and understanding and purpose. But above all, we have to make sure that we are leading in love. And of course, I'm in a church, so I must quote a scripture. Ecclesiastes 9:11 tells us the race is not given to the swift. So I want to remind us to endure. I want to remind us that these campaigns are not in fits and starts and 2 months and 3 months and based on metrics. They are based on a powerful understanding of who we are and what our obligation is. And so my purpose and my call to you is that our endurance is simply a reminder that we must keep going, and we will finish this race together. Thank you all so much.
It would have been great to go before her. And yet, here I am. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate that call and response. I am Jadi Amazi. I am a principal for MASS Design Group. MASS is a nonprofit design collective that is working at the intersection of architecture and social justice. For those that are not familiar with our organization, MASS stands for Model of Architecture Serving Society, and for the past 15 years, we have had the great pleasure of working both nationally and internationally in service of other mission-aligned organizations to figure out how our built environment can be a true reflection of our efforts and of our needs. I am the director of our Public Memory and Memorials Lab, which is a portfolio of work that focuses on spatializing memory and asks the question of how spatializing memory can cultivate a sort of drive and an effort and an enthusiasm around collective action for generations to come. We are thinking about what it means to expand our narratives, to think about who is being represented in our public realm, but more importantly, who is not being represented in our public realm, whose stories are being denied, whose stories are being ignored, and how can we bring to the forefront the importance of those histories such that they are integrated into the daily fabric of our lives, such that we are able to inspire ourselves, our children, our children's children, but also our elders to continue to do the work that has brought us to the places that we have been. And so we focus on design and architecture as a tool to perhaps bring about the cultural shifts that are necessary to encourage folks to do the political work that we just heard Ms. Gilchrist speak to, by way of creating experiential design that surely brings folks into these histories and helps them to understand perhaps the emotional journeys that are necessary to complete the work that we are honoring here today. And so I am more than grateful and perhaps even a little emotional to be here today, to be a witness to this historic moment, to be amongst you all and participating in these conversations as we think about what it means to integrate our history, our cultural contributions to these advancements of our communities and of our societies. And I look forward to learning enough, as the mayor just mentioned, learning enough and continuing to learn how I can continue to be of service through the lens of architecture and design. So thank you all so very much for having me this morning. I look forward to the rest of the program.
Good morning. Nice to be here. My name is Barbara Tagger. I am the acting superintendent for the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail, the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site, and the Tuskegee Institute National Historic Site. And I also have a real job. I actually manage another park in Alabama, Horseshoe Bend National Military Park. It's a pleasure to be here and to be asked to present to the families of the campsites along the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail. I must say that I've had the pleasure and the privilege to help create the trail back in 1991 when Congress authorized the National Park Service to do a feasibility study and to see if this story was worthy of being commemorated within the National Park Service system. I also had the privilege and the honor to work closely with Congressman John Lewis, who often told me at times that when we saw younger pictures of himself, he always said, that's when I was thinner and I had more hair. So we always start our conversation that way. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that this story, which was young at the time because it was less than 50 years old when we began working on the National Historic Trail, how important this story is. The people who sacrificed themselves to make sure that everyone in this country, particularly African Americans, could have the right to vote. And that is a privilege as well as a right, a citizenship right, actually, for those who live in this country and yet were denied that opportunity. He wanted also to make sure that the people who were a part of this effort would also be recognized for what they did. We know a lot of their names because we see them in our history books like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others. But there was the people who were in the communities who didn't have their names. So people didn't know their names and didn't know what they had sacrificed. So we made the effort, the National Park Service that is, in making sure those stories are going to be told. So it has taken this long. I know people always ask, how long is it going to take? Say how long? Not long. But we are working towards making sure that the National Historic Trail will commemorate all of those who participated in this effort. So now, over the years, you may now see that we have 3 interpretive centers along the route. One in Selma, one in Lowndes County, and of course one here in Montgomery. We are working towards right now in developing a state-of-the-art visitor center or interpretive center in Selma, which we will be telling the story of what happened in Selma, and again recognizing those whose names that are not commonly known. We are elevating those names now. Mrs. Boynton, Mrs. Marie Foster, Reverend Reese, and others. Those folks who, over the years, and when we were doing this study, became my friends. And I'm so sorry to say that they're not here to enjoy this moment that we're commemorating them now through the efforts that we're embarking on in developing the interpretive centers. We also want to make sure that we elevate other people as well, and to make sure that their names are going to be engraved in the history for our young people, which really warms my heart to see young people here today, because that's my incentive for what I've done over the 40 years that I've been working with the National Park Service. That is my motivation, always. And so we want to make sure that they know these folks. Hopefully they become their mentors. They model themselves after them. Hopefully one day one of them will be standing right here where I'm standing and commemorating the efforts that their ancestors have left for them. So on that note, I would like to present to our guest honorees. Normally, when we talk about the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March, we always talk about the marchers, the protesters, the organizers. But we sometimes leave out the people who actually did sacrifice their lives to protect the marchers, the protesters, and the organizers. So this is our way of showing our appreciation, and I hope you show your appreciation and honoring the families along the campsites who gave their land, who gave their lives and their and provided the places for our who gave their properties up for the protesters and the marchers who took part in the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March of 1965. So to start off, to give that honor, I'd like to present this beautiful plaque to the Hall family. It says, the plaques all say the same, so I will just read this first one. With deep gratitude and admiration, we honor Mr. David Hall and the entire Hall family for your courage in the face of adversity. Your family legacy serves as a beacon of hope and reminder of the power we each hold to effect lasting change. Presented by the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail on March 21st, 2024. We also want to present a plaque to the Steele family. Again, we thank you for all that you have done to make this history possible. Thank you. The Gardner family. Okay. And last but not least, the city of St. Jude. thank you for coming and honoring these foot soldiers and our heroes and heroines. And we, the National Park Service, will continue what we do best, is to preserve, to interpret, and to honor those who have made this history and contributed greatly to the history of America. Thank you, and God bless you, and peace be unto you.
Thank you all. Wow, that was amazing and a long time coming. And wow, I'm just really excited to be here with you all today. And on the 59th anniversary of the actual march from Selma to Montgomery. This time, 59 years ago, they were preparing at a church in Selma. I think 7,000 to 8,000 people on their way to Campsite 1, the David Hall family. And we're certainly looking forward, but for a second, let's look backwards. 10 years before March 21, 1965, there was a little boy killed in Mississippi, dragged out of his bed in the middle of the night. 10 years before that, 1965, 1955, there was a Montgomery bus boycott that started in this very city. 4 years before 1965, there were the Freedom Rides, where riders were assaulted and beaten in Anderson, Birmingham, and Montgomery, and jailed in Mississippi. 2 years before that was Project Confrontation and the Children's March, where they turned water hoses on children. You've seen the pictures. 2 years also, that same year was I Have a Dream speech. And then 2 weeks before March 21st, 1965 was Bloody Sunday. I think 30 days before March 21st was the shooting death of Jimmy Lee Jackson and Marion. That was the environment that these families lived in. And yet they still had the courage and the bravery to do what I like to think I would have done, but there's just no way to know unless you're there in that moment. And we're grateful for the Hall, the Steel, the Gartner, and the City of St. Jude for what they did 59 years ago. And so what we're gonna do to start this off, because I'm not a hype man and I'm not a DJ, but we're going to make some noise for these families in here today. We're going to do that. So That's great. That's great. That's great. That's not enough. That's not enough. So on the count of three, you don't have to stand right now, but on the count of three, we are going to yell the loudest thank you this side of Montgomery has ever seen. So all we're going to do is just say one big thank you. Okay? On the count of three. Everybody ready? Awesome. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So what we're going to do now is really just have a conversation with the families about this history and with representatives from the city of St. Jude and Mr. Malden, who is so graciously joining us here today. I think we're going to try to grab a couple of microphones. So we're just going to go down the road here and start with the Hall family, campsite 1. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask the question and introduce yourself and then just pass the mic. So basically, Mr. David Hall, I know a lot of his story because we've been working together for the last 4 years. It seems like 10 to 15. You guys have been so great. But if you will, Divine, just tell us a little bit about Mr. David Hall, your grandfather.
Hi everyone, my name is Divine Hall McGuire. I'm the granddaughter of David Hall. I'm representative for David Hall Farm Campsite 1, the home house of David Hall. And so proud to be here. David Hall was a farmer. I say he was the farmer, the fixer, and the father, because first of all, he was a father. He was a father of 9 children. He had a 3rd grade education and was not able to finish school. So for all you young people, make sure you finish school, because he was not able to finish school so that you could be here. He was a fixer because he worked at GWC, which is George Washington Carver Housing Authority in Selma. That was his, I say that was his part-time job, because his full-time job was a farmer of 80 acres that he purchased in 1940 with his wife Cheney, and went on to 1965 with his second wife Roosevelt to stand up, risking his job, his life, his land, and his whole life's work. He risked it all, but was able to hold on to it with the grace of God. Because it was nothing but God. But he did all that to make sure we could vote and move forward as a people and as a nation and make this a better world. So I put that on the shoulders of you young people out there to live out his dream of education and making this world a better place.
Awesome.
My name is Roselia Steele Harris, and my grandmother wasn't doing that back then in order to get this kind of recognition today, because she was not that kind of person. She was a quiet, reserved person. I think she's listed as a farmer in everything that I've seen that's been written by us, the news reporters. But she was a farmer first when she was rearing her children. She had I think, one deceased before she became a full-grown person. But she had 4 boys and 1 daughter, and she was an entrepreneur. She ran a store on Highway 80 where she served the community. There were many people who purchased goods from her store, and I think when she passed away, she still had a running list of people who owed her for the commodities and the goods, because that's the way she was. They couldn't afford to pay what was needed to be paid, but she was so generous and so kind and so helpful and so supportive until she just let it go, and because she never missed a meal. And we just are so thankful for our grandmother. She was just such a wonderful grandmother, and she served so many people. And I know that when she did this, she did it from her heart, and knowing that there could be some repercussions for her doing what she did. And there was repercussion, because later on, mysteriously, her store and house was burned down to the ground. But fortunately, she was not hurt. And my cousin, my first cousin, who was living with my grandmother, they were safe. So we praise God for that. And I know she told the news reporters at the time, they were asking her, why did she do this? Or why was she doing this? She said, well, I heard my president speak the other night, which was Lyndon Baines Johnson, and if he can do this, I know he's my president too. So she got the courage and she got the willingness to want to do what needed to be done for the people, because they didn't have places to stay on the highway. There were very few people on the highway who had, black people, who had property, and some who did. They were afraid to let the civil rights people stay on their place, but she was not afraid. She said she had lived 70, and she was not worried, and she was going to do what needed to be done in order to help the cause.
I'm Cheryl Gardner Davis. I'm the 4th child of Robert and Mary Gardner. I was 4 years old when the marches camped on our site. My father was a farmer and he worked at Dana Corporation. My mother was a school teacher in the Lowndes County school system, a graduate of Alabama State University. And together, they made the decision to allow the marches to camp on the property because they didn't have the right to vote, but they wanted their children to have the right to vote. My mother was a quiet person, more of an introvert, my father the opposite, the extrovert, but they both were very involved in the community. They were community oriented, and whatever people needed in the community, they were the first to stand up and provide it. They shared vegetables, clothes, food, whatever was needed. They were always there to help the community. So when this opportunity was presented to them, it was at a meeting at the Canaan Hill Baptist Church, and my uncle, our uncle A.G. Gaston, who was married to my dad's sister, Minnie Gaston, as the organizer for planning, and they needed a 3rd campsite. He said, when you get to Lowndes County, ask for Robert Gardner. The family owns property on Highway 80, and see if he would allow it. So at this meeting, organizers attended the meeting and they inquired, where does Robert Gardner live? So 2 men who knew my father came to the house afterwards to say, hey, there's some men looking for you, and they told them why. So later the men did come and then made their request known. And he said, let me talk it over with my wife and then we'll make the decision. And later they decided that's what they would do. because at that point, they had not participated in any of the movements for fear of retaliation. And anybody, school teacher that participated, they were fired. So because of that, they did not, but they wanted to do something. They felt that this was their opportunity to become involved. And they were ready for whatever would come, the retaliation, the repercussions. They were willing to take that for the greater cause, not of the community and of the nation.
Good morning. I'm Leontine Provo Pringle. I was Provo at the time of the Civil Rights March. I am a foot soldier here at St. Jude's. I've been here all my life. But first of all, my father was an educator, teacher, principal. He was a farmer. He was military. And he helped many families. And he attended the mass meetings. He lived in South Montgomery County, which was in the rural area. And at that time, he owned 500 acres of land. And he had 5 tenants on his property that was renting. And to help, they just did farm crops. And they would give, their rent through the farm crops. And all in all, my mom was a factory worker. And we were raised a country city. So we went to school at St. Jude's. All the children went to St. Jude's to school. And in '65, I just come from that point. My mother and I, we always was wondering about the voting, when we didn't get a chance to vote, when you didn't get a chance to vote. And we were going to strive, just like my father was attending the mass meetings to see what could be done and the voting right could be passed. But anyway, when the march was coming from Selma, she got off work early, my mother. So she said, we're going to go down to the airport and we're going to join the march. So we came walking from Danville, which is Montgomery Regional Airport. It might have a new name now. But we going to walk from there, and we came on to St. Jude, where St. Jude accepted all, where none of them would accept them to rest for the night, that last night before we moved to the Capitol. We came in through the side on Hill Street, and there were thousands and thousands of people. And I remember exactly where we were standing that night. And there were many entertainers who came in. They had small planes that they came in on, and they landed on the field out there. Because that was an empty field at that time. So later on, which was very productive, we met many entertainers and many other people from different cities, white and black. And the next morning, we came back, lined up, and we went on down Oak Street. I know the very route that we took when we marched on to the Capitol. So proud to be a part of St. Jude's.
My name is Nelson Halton. I was a student at Alabama State College in 1954. I had a 10 o'clock class that morning, and I looked at my watch at 9:30. I saw this blue Pontiac pull up, and I saw this young man get out. I looked at his head, I looked at my watch, and I saw, hey, got to knock him out in 15 minutes. He came in the barber shop, and I introduced himself, I introduced myself. And after I finished cutting his hair, I gave him the mirror to shine like his haircut because he was a new customer. He told me pretty good. I said, pretty good? He said, yeah, pretty good. I said, who this cat talking? He didn't know who he talking to. I thought I was the hottest man in Montgomery. He came back 2 weeks later. I was busy, the barber was waiting, but he waited on me. So he got in the chair. I said, that must have been a pretty good haircut. He said, you all right? I said, all right. Woo. And so about 7, 8 half-cuts after that, I said I'm going to get even with this young man. After he finished preaching that Sunday, I went up and grabbed this by his hand. I said, you know what, Rev? I said, that was a pretty good sermon. Now, I said, I think you're going to be all right. So that was the beginning of our relationship. And anyway, St. Jude played a major part in the movement because if the city of Montgomery had not denied the marchers a permit to camp out, the St. Jude being a Catholic institution as it was, they allowed the marchers to camp out here. And one of the more historical things Reverend King did, he was put on a federal court order not to march that day. You can imagine the condition in Selma, Alabama, with one little restaurant and all the inconvenience of people from all over the world there. Then they had to wait a whole nother day to come to Montgomery. But as a result of his leadership, not violating the federal order, then he was able to have a successful career. So Reverend King came to Montgomery basically because he was a student at Boston Theological Seminary, and that's the church was in desperate need for a pastor. And so what happened, he really dad wanted him to go to the First Baptist Church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But Chattanooga, Tennessee was a full-time pastor. And that's desperate need because they had lost the children pastors, so he took the church for $5,000 until he finished his dissertation in Boston Theological Seminary. So he had a degree from Morehouse College in sociology, and then he got his PhD in systematic theology. So he was the ideal person for the lead march. And so I have so many questions I could tell you about the barber shop. But anyway, I'm going to tell you something. Well, the night of the march, my boss man, I went to the first barber shop I worked in with Mr. Warren Brown at the College Hill Barber Shop. And so Mr. Warren Brown, that night of the march, of the celebration here at St. Jude, he had Collins from Kellogg, the first black Collins from Ohio, down to his house, along with the pastor of Beulah Baptist Church. And so he said, Nelson, are you going over to the church now? I said, yes. He said, still driving over here. We lived in Carl Park. I said, we just walk behind Carl School and cross the avenue. We'd be at the site. So the driver said, okay. So we stopped down, and then we stopped by my house, and we had one of the church members there, and we were all going to walk together over to St. Jude that night. And so one of the men said, we always have a little prayer before we leave. So I said, that sounds wonderful. And one of the men said, Lord, have a little communion, but I had any wine, but I couldn't have no vodka. So we drank some vodka and drank here too. So when I got over to the church, that night, we had 20 minutes, 7 days, and 20 minutes. So we got over to the church on the parking lot. This lady weighed about 375 pounds. She grabbed me about, we were holding hands in the lot. And Tony Bennett came out on the stage. He said, you left my heart in San Francisco. And this lady said, and you found your soul in Alabama. So I got too many stories. I'll tell y'all some more. Yolanda and Dexter. And so he spent a lot of time in the barber shop. And so one day he was in the barber shop. 2 old men were sitting beside him. And one of those men started talking. The man said, what are you taking for your cold? The other man said, I'm taking aspirin and onion juice. The other man told the man, the best thing for your cold, they take you some turpentine and rub it on your chest. I guarantee your cold will be going the next morning. There were 2 students at the front of the barber shop. One of the students from Selma and one from Chicago. The student from Chicago got a ticket for speeding, and the boy from Selma said, man, you got to learn how to talk to these police around here. You got to say yes and no. If you say yes or no, so you probably got that ticket. So the 2 old men there, the 2 students there, and the other 2 barber men lunch. So there's the 2 of us in the barber shop. So Reverend King got up, he said, you know what, Barber? I said, what's that, Rev? He said, I've been in many schools and in many places in my life. But I believe I learned more in this barbershop today in one time. I ever learned in one time. I said, what was that? He said, barbershop medicine gets in the cemetery. Barbershop law. The barbershop law gets in the prison.
Wow. Thank you. Well, thank you, Ms. Martin. Thank you all for that. I think you all know why we invited Mr. Malden. He's a phenomenal storyteller, and we're grateful for him. And before we go to the next questions, I really just want to acknowledge some partners that made this happen today. The Conservation Fund is excited about the role that we're playing in the Black Belt. We started a program a couple of years ago and just grew into this. And so I thank the Conservation Fund, I thank Wells Fargo Foundation, Milo's Corporation, JPV Foundation, Dick Rucker, USDA, City of Marion, City of Selma, City of Whitehall, City of Montgomery, Pounds of Care, all the partners that made today happen, all the partners who trusted us to work with them and to do things like this. We just couldn't do it. You know, all the local partners, all the local nonprofits, all the people who for years protected this history when no one was looking, when no one was there, when no one helped, they still protected the history. And we owe them a lot for doing that. And it is up to us now to figure out a way to make sure that as they do their work, they have the support they need to ensure that this history is around for our young people and for my three little young people. I can show pictures afterwards, phenomenal kids. But I always show pictures. But we will continue with questions. So, Devon, I will go to you. Your grandfather decided to let the marchers stay on his property. After that, what was the environment? What was life like, and how did he cope with the aftermath of that?
How did he cope? With people riding by on horses, he shot up in the air and said, if you don't get up, he just shot up in the air. That was a warning. And the bullet probably went to heaven because God always blessed him. He always watched over. How did he cope? Prayer. Talking to God. The thing I say all the time that I was told, he always said, Lord, keep me in my right mind. That's how he coped. Walking through the land, feeling the soil, the leaves, the trees, hearing the birds, that was probably his sanctuary. But I would say he probably coped because there was not going to be another choice but to cope back then. For me, what I think is that he probably tapped into a coping skill that people don't even, at that time, they didn't even know what it was. You're talking about mental health issues? He didn't even know that word. So he reached out to God, did his best, looked at the progress, never got a chance to vote, but he knew that people around him were able to vote. So that was his strength, and knowing that his children had moved on to different parts of the country and had the ability to go to school and have children, and that was what did it for him. That's how he moved forward. As many of the people in this room, that's how they moved forward. Also, the ones who aren't here now, they passed it on. That's how they move forward. And it's our job, especially my job, to make sure that that story is told and that your stories are told. We stand up for the untold so that we can progress and I can honor him.
Awesome. And I'm going to go to Cheryl. If you would talk about the aftermath of your mom and father participating and allowing the marchers to stay on their property.
Once it got out that our parents had decided to allow the marchers to stay, my father received threats, they received bribes not to doing one of the sweeps of the property prior to the Marches arriving. The neighbor who my father had a very contentious relationship with was spotted with a high-powered rifle pointed in the direction of the pastor waiting on my father to make his rounds to check on his cattle. My mother, who was a school teacher, the all-white school board went to the white superintendent to get her fired. She was not fired because the superintendent was a very good friend of my maternal grandfather, who was her confidant, and her connection to the black community. And so the superintendent told the board the land belonged to my father and my father's family, so therefore it was not my mother's decision. So she was not involved, and she protected my mother to keep her from being fired. Days after my father told us we could go nowhere alone, that we had to have an adult with us and someone had to know where we were at all times. We were under FBI protection. So I think my father didn't tell us the whole story. So it was something that was out there that he didn't tell us about. Because why would we be under FBI protection if everything was okay? So it was a very a trying time to make sure that we were safe, that he kept his family safe. But we had the support of the community, and that was extremely important. There were neighbors who would come and stay at the house when my father returned back. At first he worked at night, so he had his schedule changed so he could be home at night with us. And then when he went back to work, we had members of the community who would come and stay at the house. They would watch over the house when we weren't there. The Masonic Lodge offered support. So we had a lot of community support. And without that community support, I don't think we would have been able to make that. My father would have been successful. And like with the mental health, I'm sure it was very stressful. And even though he didn't let it show, I'm sure there was some fear there because of the unknown. My mom traveling on Highway 21 going to work, anything could have happened. Anything could have happened to him traveling Highway 80 to go to his job, but we were protected by God, and so we're very thankful for that.
We're going to Miss Rosie Steele was born in 1889?
Yes.
1889. 1889, got it.
And she was Black Creek Indian, and she was born in Wilcox County, but her family moved to Lowndes County when she was very young, and that's where she grew up the rest of her life. And she married my grandfather, who was Richard Steele, and that's how she became Steele. So she's a Hunter Steele, and she was very Indian featured, and she was very productive. And she only had a second grade education, but she used that education. A second grade education back then was almost like a high school education. You use it wisely. You learn a lot, not only from your schooling, but you learn from other people. She was an entrepreneur. She counted her money. She bought lots of property in Lowndes County, and there's still property in Lowndes County that's owned by our family that she left. She was very productive. She was very fruitful. She didn't waste her money. She used her money to help lots of people. She helped to bury family members that needed to be buried, and she helped to feed family members that needed to be fed. I know that for a fact because I worked in her store from a very young girl up until I left and went to college. And even then, I would go back on weekends. I left there and came here to Montgomery to go to college. And I would go back on weekends and work in my grandmother's store. and she was still doing the same thing. She cared about her grandchildren. She wanted them to get an education. She wanted them to go further and do better. So most of us did. So we're proud of our family. We love our family, and we stick together. And we try to keep her legacy going. And every opportunity that we get, we're trying to put her out there in the forefront.
Wow. So you guys heard about the retaliatory measures. You heard about the dangers of that time. But what is so amazing about these families, the family that owned the property in 1965, even with all of that, own the properties today. And I just think that when you think about African American farmers, there are not that many. Yeah. And to go through that and then still own your property, I think is a testament to those families. And so we celebrate that. And so, Mr. Morgan, before we wrap up, can you give us one more story?
I'm so mixed up, I don't know. I will tell you a story I never told before.
Oh my goodness, awesome.
My father was born in 1896 in Montgomery, Alabama. His father, my grandfather, was a slave. A white man owned him from the Carolinas. He came to Monroe in 1800 to build a church. And I often wonder why my grandfather's house was so well built. Because I guess he stayed on with the slave master after slavery was over. My mother's father was a mulatto. Her grandfather was a white man. Her mulatto father had 100 acres of land that was inherited from his father. And my mother was my mother with father was married to an Indian. And so that's me, and I'm so mixed up now. But anyway, we'll tell one of my more outstanding stories that I think would be helpful to all of the people in this audience. One day in the barber shop, the sociology professor from Hampton Institute stopped by my barber shop. And the Reverend King was so happy in the barber shop. So I introduced him. The Reverend King gave me a peach prize and all the good stuff. And so the conversation started that what can we do to solve our racial problems in America? The sociology professor said, first thing we got to go back to the basics and understand how the problem came from. He said, yes, I could tell you, Rev, said when the European white man came here, he had an organized system. And in that organized system, his basic thing, slavery was just part of his money-making tools. He says for an example, he says when the system got control of the orange, many men got control of the oranges in Florida, down the North Sugar got the sugar cane in Louisiana, the Standard Oil got the oil in Texas, when Gallo wine got the grapes in California, when Tennessee got the whiskey in Tennessee, when the Kentucky got the coal, and Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi got to control the cotton. So the next thing the white man did, he did Wall Street to control the capital. He did West Point to defend it. He said that is the United States of America. Reverend King said, have a good day, sir.
So, and I think it's awesome, just completely awesome to have the barber of Dr. King with us today. That's just awesome.
Remember one thing, barbershop medicine, you get the cemetery,
part of what the Conservation Fund has been doing in the Black Belt region with the support of our partners and stakeholders that we work with is building partnerships. That's been one of the things that we focused on from the very beginning. And even going back to the campsite families, this was, and I think you all may remember this, March 21st, 2020 was the first time that all 3 campsite families have met. So 4 years ago today was the first time. And we met in Selma and walked across the bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge 4 years ago. I was like, wow, how did I get here? But to walk across the bridge with the campsite families 4 years ago today is something I would never forget. So we honor you guys as much as we can. But getting back to partnerships, I was putting this event together and then I got a call from the Reese family. And they told me it is F.D. Reese Day in the city of Selma. And wanted to know if they could be a part of this event. Oh my God, yes, I dropped the phone. Yes, you can be a part of this event because this is about partnerships. This is about uplifting the entire story of the history of this region and this state. I am from the Black Belt. I'm the son of the Black Belt. I grew up in Utah, Alabama. And there is no better place than Alabama and the Black Belt region. Special people, special place. And so what we're gonna do now, I'm supposed to do closing remarks. So this is the pre-closing. We're gonna have the grandson of Mr. F.D. Reese come in and share a few moments with us today.
Is it still morning? Good morning. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to say I'm honored to be in your presence. I don't take it lightly when I am in front of the families of people that sacrifice their life. And I must say, I don't know if I would have done the same thing that a lot of the family members and the people that's in this community are. They're resilient. It's different people. I have to say that. I won't be long. I just like to be a part of forums like this. I'm the COO of the Frederick D. Reese Foundation, and we are community driven. Anytime that anyone is doing something that is community driven, that is historical, that is still trying to teach the history, that a lot of the times that we see now, it can go by the wayside because of different things that's going on in America. I love to be a part of this, just to share some history. I'll be 2 minutes. I'll just tell about my grandfather a little bit. From Selma, Alabama. I was born in Selma, Alabama, so whenever I walk into the room, I represent Selma, so I don't take that lightly. Yes, sir. My grandfather, he was the president of the Dallas County Voters League. He took over after Mr. Sam Boynton, Amelia Boynton's husband, got sick. He took over as the president of the Dallas County Voters League, and I would submit to everybody that the Dallas County Voters League don't get enough credit like the SCLC and SNCC. Just so as these families up here are fighting to continue the legacy of their family, which don't get enough credit. And I know a lot of the times we hear 1 or 2 names about the credit of everything that went on. So I think these type of situations is what will help change that, the stories from the family and therein. So my grandfather took over Dallas County Voters League from Mr. Sam Boynton as the president in 1963. And the Dallas County Voters League had 100 members, and under his leadership, it grew to over 2,000 members. A lot of people ask, why did Martin Luther King go to Selma? Well, under my grandfather's leadership, Selma's population was a little over 20,000 people. So if you have any organization that has 2,000 members, that means you can touch 10% of the population if you walk into it. And my granddad understood that Dr. King had what would be equivalent to 100 million Instagram followers at this time. Understand? So he understood this guy that did the I Have a Dream speech. If I can bring him in, and then the local movement, what we have going on, and then it'll project all over the world what's going on in Selma, in the nation. And I want to speak on the importance of St. Jude and the route from Selma to Montgomery. On that front line, my granddad used to always say, he used to tell us stories, and I know some young kids in here. Sometimes my granddad, he was a pastor for 50 years. And he would sit us at that dining room table, and we like, oh Lord, here go this sermon again. He's about to tell us what we're doing wrong and what we need to improve. But a lot of those I take. I'm 40 years old now, and it sticks with me to this day of the important facts that he told us and how I use it and apply it to my life today. He would sit us at that table. When he talked about the Selma to Montgomery March, that was one of the only events in his life that he talked about something being completed and how he felt really happy about that day. And when he talked about other things like Bloody Sunday and things that happened after, even though he stayed in Selma after all of that was passed, there was a lot of things that he had to go through staying in Selma. But about that day, he always talked about that day. He said we was marching down Dexter Avenue and we was marching to the Capitol. And he said when he got to the Capitol, he sat on that sea, he sat on that panel, and he looked out in that sea of humanity, and he felt a great feeling of victory and triumph. And he had not felt that in a long time. And so I submit to you today that what's going on now and what we are doing, this is important. And I know sometimes it may seem like that, oh, here's another boring thing, and we're telling the history that we heard over and over again, but guess what? We haven't heard it over and over again. This is my first time hearing this. And when Mr. Phillips said 4 years ago, that was the first time all the families met, the fight is not over. We have to keep going. We have to be resilient. This is important. And I'll leave y'all with that. Let's keep fighting, let's keep going, and God bless.
Well, March 21st, 7,000 to 8,000 people left Brown to go to Campsite 1 and start the Selma to Montgomery March. On March 24th, 1965, over 30,000 people were over here in this field. Muddy, it rained that day, but they still came. And so what we're going to do before we have the choir come back again, if you are a foot soldier, if you were here in 1965, or if you have a family member who was here or a part of the civil rights movement at any point, would you please stand? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We humbly thank you all for your service. That period was, it was a tough time, but you all made it through. You're here with us today, and we honor you all. So thank you all. Thank you. Oh, let's another round of applause. Thank you. We want to thank Father Jones and the City of St. Jude for welcoming us into this absolutely beautiful, beautiful building. I had never been in here before this morning. In my eyes, I was like, wow, this is a beautiful, beautiful place. And so thank you all for allowing us to be here today. Thank you to the campsites. You guys are awesome, have always been awesome, and we appreciate you all for everything that your family has done. And what we're going to do now, well, before we do that, we're going to have the choir come and sing We Shall Overcome, but as we look forward, we've looked back, so for a few moments, let's look forward. 60 years of the Selma to Montgomery March is coming up next year. The Selma Jubilee is the standard. They do a phenomenal job every year for Bloody Sunday. They are the standard for civil rights celebration anywhere in the country, in my opinion. They do a phenomenal job. But guys, there are other things to celebrate as well. There are other parts of the story that has to be told, has to be celebrated. And we are going to work diligently for the rest of this year to make sure that next year we honor as much history as we can. It will be 60 years of the Selma to Montgomery March. It will be 70 years since the Montgomery bus boycott. That 10-year period from 1955 to 1965 changed America forever. Forever. And a lot of it happened here in the Black Belt. Not by people, some people from outside, but it was the people of the Black Belt. Like, wow, like you guys are awesome. The people of the Black Belt changed the world, and we need to honor that. And we need to honor it from a local, we should be able to get 25,000 people in Montgomery next year. We should be, and if we just got people from the region, we could do that, not let alone the people from outside. So let's set our goals big for next year. Let's find a partner and organization to work with to make that happen, because we have our children here. They deserve to see that. They deserve to see that connectivity, and we are delighted to be a small part of that. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to ask the choir to come one last time and perform a song, and then we will. Father Jones, you want to come up?
Yes. If you have a hymn book nearby, we'd like for everyone to stand and sing "We Shall Overcome." It's one of our well-known civil rights songs. That's hymn number 6.
Yeah. Hymn number 652 in the screen hymnal. There should be hymnals on the ends of the pews there. It's "We Shall Overcome." So it's in the green hymn book. And maybe some people can help move them into the middle of the pews. 652.